The thought that creates the worlds, or what language the Creator speaks. In 1995, Dr. Emoto Masaru was able to record the musical impressions of water for the first time. Scientists gave water to listen to some music, after which rapidly froze it, and under the microscope they clearly saw crystals that water formed as a result. This is how the music of Bach, Mozart, Beethoven, hard rock looks like. The crystals of tap water looked like a chaotic blur. An American breeder, Luther Burbank, and this is already such a famous example when he, being famous, who had great success in breeding new varieties of plants, took on one cactus which had long spines. But it was very tasty and it was used as food. It was very inconvenient to peel it and to tinker with it in general. And then he thought, let me now graft the cactus without spines or with smaller ones to this one. He fought for several years and nothing worked. Then he got angry and just started talking to it. I don't know specifically what words he said, they don't write about it, but he just asked it to remove the spines. It sounds ridiculous, right? In fact, this is also an influence, because our genes have a lot in common with plant genes, All living things come from one. Plants and animals, they all come from the same root. Therefore, DNA in a cactus and DNA in a person are arranged in exactly the same way. Another matter is what information is recorded there and how it can be influenced. So he influenced the cactus, since speech is a quasi-genetic material, and after several generations he achieved that the cactus removed the spines. This is an inherited trait, and now this cactus is already growing without spines and is used for food. And it has long been forgotten that Luther Burbank developed this species out by a deal. Dr. Emoto placed rice in 3 glass jars and poured water over it. And every day for a month he said thank you to one jar, you're a fool to the second, and did not pay attention to the third. A month later, the rice to which Dr. Emoto said thank you began to ferment, emitting a strong and pleasant smell. The rice from the second jar turned black, and the rice that had been overlooked began to rot. Actually, this is a fairly common thing in everyday life, but it happens a little differently. There are good housewives who have a lot of plants in their garden, at home, etc. This is called a green finger. They have all plants blooming, growing, and bearing fruit. And there are housewives who cannot grow anything well. Everything dies, dries up, and nothing happens. And those who have the green finger, they are kind, they talk. Even if you just utter a speech, words, all sorts of addresses to someone, good words, kind words, and everything happens wonderfully. Moreover, I had a group of women who worked with plants, and they mentally set the shape of the leaves. I have great pictures. It's actually an amazing thing to change the genetics so that the leaf shape of an oak tree or a bird cherry becomes different. These women showed me these pictures and said nobody believes us. And moreover, there was a funny episode when something bad happened in this laboratory, and a woman who took the situation kind of personally, she started drawing lines on a piece of paper for some reason. I don't know what exactly it was, but the next morning everybody came in and all the leaves were streaked. So even these unusual things happen. I saw it with my own eyes. Of course, no one believes me and no one publishes anything about it. And we've set up an even more serious experiment in terms of scientific support. So we've created an electromagnetic generator which works just like our chromosomes. And one effect is realized there which I'm not going to talk about, it would be too long, but it is called Fermi-Pastor-Ulam effect. This is the memory of nonlinear systems for initial excitation. If anyone's interested, they can look that up. So we used this generator to inject human speech into plants. We irradiated wheat and barley with 2000 Röntgens, and accordingly, after that their chromosomes were torn, and in theory, after a few generations they should have died because their genetic apparatus has already been destroyed. And we began to talk to them through this exact generator, introducing human speech and simulating electromagnetic radiation, which then entered the chromosomes. And EMR is actually a copy of what happens there in the chromosomes. And we set up such an experiment where we talked to these 2000 X-ray irradiated and dying wheat and barley plants. We basically entered the information just like Luther Burbank. We just turned to them saying, "Come on guys, we'll fix your chromosomes now. We ask you to regenerate them so that they can be repaired." Well, there were different words, but in general, a clear algorithm, the same text. We pronounced it in Russian, English, and German, and to the control we introduced some random abracadabra words. All this has been published. There is a large article in the Journal of Russian Physical Thought and my first monograph, Wave Genome, that was published in 1994. Everything is described in detail there. So when we entered information, chromosomes were restored regardless of the language. There were great statistics because we worked with tens of thousands of wheat and barley plants, and people counted these statistics blindly, by the way, not knowing what was there, so everything was clear and objective. The statistics are excellent. P-value equals less than 0.001, that is, these are absolutely reliable results. 93% of the seeds germinated in the control batch. A prayer gave the result of 96% and the longest sprout length up to 1 centimeter. Household cursing, 58%. Expressive cursing, 49%. The sprout length is not uniform, a mold has appeared. Human speech, it really is genetic material, but why is the same thing achieved in different languages? Because there's something preconscious, subconscious, non-verbal that a person radiates. So I've not set up a single experiment. You just have to think, and that's it. And who thinks, a Jew, a Russian, or a Tatar, it doesn't matter. The thought is the same, and the verbalization goes in Russian, English, and German, but the essence is the same. So the form of signal transmission does not depend on and does not affect its content, you know? That is, the address can be written in Russian, in English, it can be written in Morse code, it can be pronounced orally, but the address will be the same. It will reach the addressee no matter what language you use. It is a well-known rule that the information carrier does not affect the content of the information. So this experiment is a direct proof of the genetic potential of human speech. And how do you talk to a dog? You can talk to it in any language, it will understand you, but it doesn't know the language, because this is a subconscious quantum non-locality. This is what Hameroff and Penrose say, that there's an information coming from the brain that is in the form of superposition. Physicists will understand me when there's both things at the same time. There is such a famous Schrodinger's joke, Schrodinger's cat, when the cat is alive, but at the same time it's dead. And such a unity of signs, the mixing, occurs in the brain when it has not yet formulated in the form of speech what it wants to say, you know? There is deep physics behind this. Our subway exhibit comes to us from Japan and Mr. Masaru Emoto. Mr. Emoto became terribly interested in the molecular structure of water and what affects it. Now, water is the most human receptive of the four elements. Mr. Emoto thought perhaps it would respond to non-physical events, so he set up a series of studies, applied mental stimuli, and photographed it with a dark field microscope. We put about 5 milliliters of water in droplets in each of the 50 petri dishes. We then took those 50 dishes and froze them in the freezer at negative 25 degrees Celsius for about 3 hours. Then we transferred these frozen samples to a refrigerator set at negative 5 degrees Celsius, where a microscope with a camera was installed. There we photographed each drop of water separately. We first photographed the water in which we did not put any information. Then we took the water with the information and did the same procedure. We took before and after photos of exposure and compared the differences. When we mentally transferred feelings of love and gratitude to the water, the result was the most beautiful crystal. At such moments, I thought that peace was made in the water. This first picture is a picture of water from the Fujiwara Dam. And this picture is the same water after receiving a blessing from a Zen Buddhist monk. Now in this next series of pictures, Mr. Emoto printed out words, taped them to bottles of distilled water, and let them out overnight. This first photograph is a picture of the pure distilled water, just the essence of itself. These subsequent photographs, as you can see, are each different. This is the chi of love. And we move along here to thank you. And you can see where he taped that to this bottle here. But if you read Japanese, you already knew that. Now, Mr. Emoto speaks of the thought or intent being the driving force in all of this. The science of how that actually affects the molecules is unknown, except to the water molecules, of course. And it's really fascinating when you keep in mind that 90% of our bodies are water. Makes you wonder, doesn't? If thoughts could do that to water, imagine what our thoughts can do to us.